Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to this explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here with me today. Let's just dive right in, shall we? Today, we are opening up the pages of one of the most famous books in the entire world, but we're going to look at it from a slightly different, incredibly human angle. We're tracing the deeply personal journey of Anne Frank, going from her quiet internal brooding right through to her sheer brilliance and, honestly, her highly entertaining life in the classroom. We are going to see a young girl who is full of wit, humor, and just a profound need for a true friend. Here's a quick look at our journey today. We're starting with Paper Has More Patience, followed by a brief life sketch. Then we'll head straight into the classroom chaos with Quaking in Its Boots and the Chatterbox essays, before wrapping it all up with a masterpiece of ingenuity. All right, part one, Paper Has More Patience. You know, there's a profound irony here. On the surface, this 13-year-old schoolgirl seems to have the whole shebang: loving parents, aunts, a nice home, and like 30 friends. Yet deep down, she feels completely alone because she just can't confide in them about anything beyond everyday stuff. And that leads us to a crucial turning point, her famous realization. Paper has more patience than people. This hit her on a day she was feeling a little down. Picture this. She's sitting at home, resting her chin in her hands, completely bored, brooding over whether she should stay in or go out. She ends up staying right where she is, coming to the conclusion that Paper truly does have way more patience than anyone around her. Let's look at the exact words she uses. She felt listless, which basically means she had zero energy or interest in anything. And it was exactly this listlessness that drove her to a deep need to confide, to share her most private thoughts with someone she could actually trust. Since she didn't plan to let anyone else read her musings, she transformed a simple, stiff-backed notebook into that trusted confidant. She didn't just want to jot down cold, hard facts. She wanted the diary to be an imaginary friend, a friend she affectionately named Kitty. Moving on to part two, a brief life sketch. Now, Anne felt it would be kind of weird to just jump into telling stories to Kitty without giving some context, so she decided to provide a quick sketch of her family's background, starting with her adorable father and her mother, Edith. You can see just how rapidly her family was moving around during these early years. Her older sister, Margot, was born in Frankfurt, Germany in 1926, and Anne followed in 1929. They lived in Frankfurt until Anne was 4. Then the major shifts began. In 1933, her parents emigrate to Holland. The two girls are sent off to Aachen to stay with their grandmother. Margot heads to Holland in December, and Anne finally follows a few months later in February of 1934. I absolutely love the humor Anne brings to this memory. Just look at the phrase she uses for her arrival in Holland, plunked down. It's such a great informal phrase for putting something down super casually. Anne writes that she was quite literally plunked down on the table as a birthday present for her sister Margot. I mean, it's such a sharp, witty observation from a young girl navigating what was actually a massive life change. Once she was in Holland, she started right away at the Montessori nursery school and stayed there until she was 6. She made her way through her education up to the 6th form, where her teacher was the head mistress, Mrs. Cooperis. Anne clearly formed incredibly deep attachments, because at the end of that year, both she and Mrs. Cooperis were in tears during a truly heartbreaking farewell. But the sketch also touches on some deeply poignant moments. In the summer of 1941, her beloved grandma fell ill and had to have an operation, which meant Anne's birthday passed with barely any celebration. Sadly, her grandma passed away in January 1942. But to show her enduring love, during Anne's next birthday celebration, a special candle was lit for Grandma right alongside the rest. It's just so sweet. All right, let's shift gears to section 3, Quaking in Its Boots. Once she brings Kitty up to the present date in June 1942, the tone shifts dramatically. We drop right into the highly anxious, chaotic energy of her classroom. Anne captures this universal student experience so perfectly. She writes that her entire class is quaking in its boots, literally shaking with absolute fear and nervousness. Why? Because of the upcoming teachers' meeting where they decide who moves up a form and who is kept back. Anne casually notes that a quarter of the class are dummies who probably should stay back, but she wisely points out that teachers are, quote, the most unpredictable creatures on earth. The tension in that room is just palpable. Half the class is running a betting ring. The two boys sitting behind Anne, CN and Jacques, have actually staked their entire holiday savings on a bet about who will pass. It's just a constant back and forth of, you're gonna pass, no I'm not. Her friend Jeanne and Anne are laughing themselves silly over it. but the boys are so relentless that not even G's pleading glances or Anne's own angry outbursts can get them to calm down. Which brings us to section 4, the chatterbox essays. Now, Anne wasn't really sweating her grades, but her irrepressible habit of talking in math class was about to land her in some seriously hot water. Enter Mr. Keesing, the math teacher. Anne affectionately, if a bit cheekily, calls him an old fogey, very strict, old-fashioned guy. And Mr. Keesing was incredibly annoyed with Anne for ages for one simple reason. She just would not stop talking. After giving her several warnings, he finally decided to assign her extra homework as a punishment. But you have to see how hilariously this punishment escalates. Mr. Keesing doesn't just hand out extra math problems. Oh no, he assigns essays. First, an essay simply titled, A Chatterbox. When she inevitably talks again, he steps it up, an incorrigible chatterbox. And finally, during the third lesson, he assigns the absolute most ridiculous title yet. Quack, 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 said Mistress Chatterbox. So, how does Anne tackle that first essay? It is pure genius. Sitting at home, chewing the tip of her fountain pen, she knew anyone could just ramble on and leave big, wide spaces between the words. But Anne wanted to formulate a genuine, convincing argument to prove the absolute necessity of talking. She ended up writing 3 whole pages, arguing that talking is just a fundamental student's trait. She even playfully blamed it on inherited traits from her mother, essentially proving her chatter was incorrigible, meaning it was a built-in quality that simply could not be corrected. And here we are at section 5, a masterpiece of ingenuity. It's time for the ultimate showdown between Anne and Mr. Keesing. When Anne was handed that third, totally absurd punishment, quack, 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 the entire class just roared with laughter. Anne had to laugh too, but she had a bit of a problem. She'd pretty much exhausted her ingenuity, her originality and inventiveness on the topic of chatterboxes. Luckily, her good friend San stepped in and offered to help Anne write this final essay from beginning to end entirely in verse. Anne literally jumped for joy. So the poem they wrote, it was brilliant, but wow, it was also a little bit dark. Together, they crafted a story about a mother duck and a father swan who had 3 little baby ducklings. And the tragic twist, the baby ducklings were bitten to death by their father for one simple reason. They quacked too much. It was a very pointed, absolutely hilarious allegory for her own situation in that classroom. Talk about turning the tables. Mr. Keesing's intention was definitely to play a joke on Anne with this ridiculous subject, but Anne made absolutely sure the joke was on him. And luckily, Mr. Keesing took it exactly the right way. He loved the poem so much that he read it out loud to the class, and even to several other classes. After delivering that masterpiece, Anne was finally allowed to talk. She was never assigned extra homework again, and Mr. Keesing even started cracking his own jokes in class. Which leaves us with such a powerful thought to ponder. If, as Anne so wisely noted, paper has more patience than people, just look at how beautifully that patient diary captured her transformation. It held her darkest, quietest moments as a lonely, brooding girl and faithfully recorded her rise into this witty, ingenious classroom legend who literally outsmarted her teacher with a poem. Her diary really did become the ultimate patient friend she was always searching for. Thank you so much for joining me today on this explainer. Keep learning, and I will see you next time.